Welcome to ATG, the podcast. Today we're talking to Jason Priem, co-founder of OurResearch, which is best known for the OpenAlex bibliographic platform. Jason was kind enough to talk with us in 2022 and described how OurResearch, which was founded as Impact Story, came about, and described the story up to the impending launch of the interface access to OpenAlex. So we felt that so much has happened since then, it was worth asking him back to talk about its recent history and its future. So thanks for joining us again, Jason. And I'd like to start by just going back in a little bit detail of digging up about your background. I believe you started as a studying history. Is that correct?
I did, yeah. In fact, we were just talking. I did a summer in Cambridge studying history, which was a real delight. But yeah, I got my undergraduate in history at the University of Florida.
But then after history, you went to you did a master's in social science. So why the move from history to social science?
I wanted to be a teacher, so yeah, I got my master's in social science education, and so that was just part of my being a middle school teacher trajectory. And then I was a
Okay.
middle school teacher for 5 years, which I really enjoyed, but I just kind of missed studying as well as teaching, like learning stuff, and I was ready for change. So that's when I decided to go. I got really interested in technology and thought, well, I should go back to school for something related to technology. And yeah, so information science just kind of like, just happened to meet a guy online who was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill information science program. And he was doing work that I thought was cool. So I was like, oh, maybe I could go there. And they took me, which was very fortunate for me.
Sounds like a great accidental encounter.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still quite a jump from there to from teaching to what you specialised in, which is this if you like management of metadata. So why the interest in coding and managing metadata not always go side by side? So how did you get involved in the sort of putting together and solving scholarly problems in this way?
Yeah, good question. So I was I was always really interested in communities, and my particular interest in tech was like, how can we use tech to help communities understand themselves better? So not just kind of study them from the top down as a subject, but sort of as a participant. And like that, my early work was in like communities of bloggers. But when I saw that there was this really beautiful network describing the community of science already out there, right, in kind of the citation graph, I thought, well, this is so pretty, and it's also very like useful. So this is what I should be working on. So that's why I got really excited about how can we use technology to better understand the community that makes up, the sort of that makes up science, that creates our knowledge as a human race. How can we actually get a picture of what that thing actually looks like? Something that is ephemeral, right? Like a community, what even is that? But maybe, if we're clever and we can employ technology in an interesting way, we can actually see something that's not there in the same way that, your body's full of bones and ligaments and everything else. And before the x-ray, you kind of had to like cut it open maybe to see that or whatever, or similarly, outer space is full of all kinds of amazing objects without telescope you can't really see. So if we use technology, we can like see stuff that isn't there. And one of the stuff that I want to see that I think is very pretty is, like I said, the network of how human knowledge is created.
Well, you've described very clearly how you can use technology to solve practical problems. In fact, there's a whole stable of projects from OurResearch, and but two that I think you described before, Unsub and Unpaywall, were both very much geared around solving specific problems, looking at sort of one use case, if you like, and fixing it. While OpenAlex is a sort of a much broader tool. So, how did you go from if you like point solutions to sort of something much more general?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the answer is I always wanted to do, and my co-founder, Heather Pavlova, who stepped down a few years ago, but I'll say we, even though it's like me now, but we always wanted to build something like OpenAlex. I guess for me in particular, I always had these kind of delusions of grandeur because I always wanted something, complete. To me, that's the beauty of living on this planet, is that like we can actually like, we can work together. We can think of ourselves as one collection, one group, ultimately one community, And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to put all of human knowledge in the same spot? It's like the Library of Alexandria, which is not coincidentally, the inspiration behind the name OpenAlex. But even though that's quite a nice idea, it's, very challenging. It's very expensive. And so, we just kind of wanted to keep moving in that direction while at the same time doing stuff that people would find useful and that there would be some money in. Because although OurResearch is a nonprofit, we've always felt like it's important for us to earn revenue. It keeps us kind of very connected to a community, connected to doing something useful. I got out of academia because, I really wanted to, I love being an academic, but I found that I had more excitement about building stuff that people would really use, that would really solve problems for them. So Unsub was really very, as you said, specifically designed to solve a problem of librarians that said, hey, we want to use open access to cancel stuff. And that's something I really care about. I like the idea of open access, and I like the idea of librarians moving more in that direction. So Unsub was in service of that. Unpaywall was kind of, you think of it as a junior OpenAlex because it was, it has about 160 million records in it, and a lot of people use it as a metadata repository, even though it's quite focused on on open access. It's focused on open access, but people use it as we're using it as a more general metadata repository, even though that isn't what it is. So yeah, I think I was always trying to move in that direction. It's just that in recent years, the technology has gotten to a point where it's easy to build something like OpenAlex compared to what it was, 10, 20 years ago. And also the persistent identifiers, PIDs. The PID graphs have grown to a point where things like Research Organization Registry, Crossref, ORCID, these other all nonprofit initiatives have done a great job of trying to reify and map the connections between researchers, organizations, papers. They're very incomplete right now, which is why I think what we're doing is still important, but they give a really good jumping off place to someone trying to do something more expansive like what OpenAlex is doing.
So do you think it was simply a sort of combination of circumstances that, plenty of people have a great vision for sort of solving all the world's scholarly problems, but not many people get a sort of a great grant from Arcadia to sort of to build it and actually carry it out. Do you think it was just a combination of circumstances that led to sort of it becoming easier, or there was some other magic in it?
Well, I guess both. I guess the combination of circumstances is the magic. I think someone would have come along and done this at some point. We are doing it, so I guess I must think at some level that we have some special, we have some capability or something to add to the problem, So, but it's definitely it's one of those things where I think the time was right for sure. It definitely wasn't like Jason Priem came along with this great idea that no one else could have ever had, for sure. I think the time was right, and then being the right person, the right place, and right time, and having a little bit of audacity to try something before most people think that it's quite ready. So. I think, for instance, the Arcadia grants, because we had a relationship with them, and we had got off to a good start on building this thing after Microsoft Academic Graph shut down. Who I should have mentioned earlier, because their work was really fantastic and really was absolutely essential for doing what we did. But then from that we tried to keep their momentum up and keep adding a bunch of stuff, and I can definitely say that we cover a lot more than they ever did, and with a lot more accuracy. Because we've had more years to work on the problem now.
Yeah, has the idea behind OpenAlex changed since you launched it? I mean, we know that when we last interviewed you, the web interface was just starting. So was that part of the original vision, or was it, or did it come later?
That was definitely part of the original vision. Yeah. I really want it to be accessible. We haven't talked about much, but I'm really obsessed with open knowledge and open science, and I really want everything that OpenAlex does to be open. And if it's got an open API and open, 300 million line JSON lines download, it's open, technically speaking, but most people don't know what to do with that. And so is it open to them? No, it's sort of, there's a technical obfuscation there, or a technical barrier. So I would really like to make, and we did make, a user interface that lets regular people look at it. I'd say I'd say what we have done so far is quite basic and really needs an enormous amount of improvement. But I think you do your best with what you got, and we got some other stuff coming up that I think is going to really improve that in the coming year.
but you're already in a remarkable position. OpenAlex has only been going for what, 2 years, 3 years, and the metrics that you're providing, you become, if you like, you moved already from being like a follower to a leader. In that people people are thinking very carefully about what you're providing, and you can. And this is similar to where Altmetric was some years ago, in that you remember lots of controversy about whether they did or includes particular social media and so on, and Twitter. So OpenAlex is already in this kind of position, which is quite remarkable. That what you decide to put into your interface can sort of people will think about and follow.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's great, and that's obviously it represents success for us. I'm very happy that people care what we're doing, because probably, I would say the majority of things that I like, projects I've done in my life, no one cares at all, and no one even knows about. That's life, right? But yeah, when you do something when people actually care about it, that's a good feeling. So yeah, I'm very happy about that, and I definitely would say we take that responsibility seriously. And it's probably worthwhile mentioning that our approach to this is to actually be extremely, extremely inclusive. So what we want to do is say, we understand we have a responsibility because people are using our data downstream, and where other providers in the past have said we are going to, our reaction to that responsibility is we will make sure that everything in our database is exactly perfect according to us. And that's one perspective. And again, maybe that made sense 10, 20 years ago. Today, I think that's the wrong perspective. Instead, our perspective is we will make sure that everything that's out there, we have. We're not telling you whether it's exactly perfect or not. We are going to aggregate third-party judgments about the quality of these materials and the quality of the metadata, and we'll present you with that, and then you can decide yourself. So, for instance, one of the things we do is, we have records for 200,000 different sources in OpenAlex, mostly journals. 200,000, that's a lot. By comparison, other databases may have 20, 50,000. So it's a lot. People understand, they want to say, well, some of that stuff is low quality, low quality. Well, obviously it depends on your definition of quality, but depending on your definition of quality, of course, for sure. People sometimes want to restrict, their searches, their investigation to a certain quality threshold. Again, quality defined by whatever, by where they want to find it. So we're aggregating third-party judgments to that. For instance, CWTS, which is a well-regarded bibliometrics laboratory in Leiden, Netherlands, they have created an open list of what they call core journals. These are journals that they've gone through and done kind of a quality assessment based on a whole bunch of factors they publish on the website. It's all done openly, which is great. And now we can, because that's open data, we integrate that into OpenAlex. And so we flag all of the journals and all of the articles within those journals about whether or not this is in a CWTS core journal. So you can do your search on whatever you're interested in, find what all of our 200,000 sources have to say about it. And then if you want to say, okay, I want something that's a little closer to what I might get in a Scopus search or Web of Science search or something that I'm a little more familiar with, absolutely hit core sources and you're going to get something more along those lines. I'm not saying we're duplicating their work because they have their own quality stuff good on them. But what I am saying is that our approach, because we are sort of more ecumenical about this, means that we're able to integrate lots of people's, quality judgment. I put air quotes on the quality just because we all know that's more than one thing to one person. And if you want to cast a very wide net, OpenAlex allows you to do that. And so that I think is a little bit different than what some of the proprietary approaches, you mentioned altmetric.com, have done in the past, where they say, well, this is our approach, this is our solution, we'll tell you what it was. I think that's fine, but it is not our approach. Our approach is to say, we're actually going to aggregate everybody's solution, because again, this is my passion, right? I want to bring the whole community in on this. And that means not just the people who are creating content, but the people who are creating content about the content. All of those links, and this is the nice thing about the citation graph, is it's all people's opinions about other intellectual products. And so when we integrate that, that CWTS core sources list, we're integrating their opinions about these products. And that too is part of the scholarly conversation. We really want to kind of treat every attestation or opinion about scholarly communication as itself scholarly communication. We really want a comprehensive graph.
So your model is one of, if you like, inclusion rather than exclusion. You're sort of pulling everything in and allowing people then to make subsets if they choose, rather than the sort of exclusive model. So if you like, it's like a Google model rather than a Web of Science model. bring it all in and but doesn't that lead to a I think it's a great approach. I think it's the perfect approach. Nonetheless, one of the challenges is the state of scholarly metadata remains woeful, and when you try to index everything, quite apart. I mean, one problem that we all know about is PDFs. Tend to sort of eliminate most of the metadata that was ever sort of introduced around an article, and don't you? And the take up of PIDs has been slow. So we still have to deal with maybe sort of 50% of all authors have now got an ORCID ID, but that means that 50% haven't. So we still have terrible problems of disambiguation, of not knowing what institution is which, and so on. Don't you find that you're limited by the poor quality of the data you're trying to index?
Well, there's sort of two questions in there. I'll try and answer them one at a time. One is, yes, I would say what we're doing is closer to Google than Web of Science, but I think one extremely important difference is that Google, again, adopts this sort of proprietary mindset of, you ask your question, we'll tell you the answer. If I go to Google and search armadillos, I'm going to get what Google thinks is the best ranked armadillo articles from what Google thinks is the journals that meet its inclusion criteria, which, by the way, it won't tell me. So what they're doing is they're very opinionated and they're very closed. I love Google Scholar. I've used it my whole scholarly life. I think they built something in very lovely, but that is, I think, quite a big liability of their approach. Is it's very, you get what Google tells you. Whereas what we're doing is, yes, we will give you some answers about what we think the answer is, but then we will be explicit about where those answers come from, because we can tell you what sources we index. And we will give you the opportunity to narrow that search to different types of quality or not as you see fit. And that's the power of doing this openly, is that you really can tailor your experience to what is important to you. And that's something I don't think anyone else does. So that's the answer to what I deem to be your first implicit question. Mm-hmm. Your second question, which is more explicit, is about the woeful status of scholarly metadata. And yeah, I mean, that's why we're here. Like, I totally agree. Like, that's if the status was not woeful, then yeah, there would be no need for us, because I think there's lots of people are interested in what we're like. Lots of people want to solve this problem. It's just, it turns out to be a really hard problem to solve. And I think the folks working in the PID community are making good progress, but I think you put your finger on it. It's like there's a lot of progress yet to be made. And in the meantime, I just don't think those of us in the open community should be sitting here saying, oh yeah, well, once everything has a PID, it'll all be solved. Okay, cool. But like in the meantime, right, like that's going to be who knows how many years, but in the meantime, like I said, everybody else is already getting addicted to these closed sources of data. So we want to actually go out there and do the work to fill those holes in the metadata graph and to solve this problem. So we spend many hundreds of thousands of dollars and lots of our lives trying to find ways to fill those holes. So when authors don't have ORCIDs, for instance, and there's, this John Smith studies, Renaissance history, and this John Smith studies wildlife ecology, we want to be able to look at their respective publication records and say, okay, well, actually, this John Smith is over here and this one's over here, and we can do that automatically, right? And that's the kind of stuff that Scopus, Web of Science, even Google Scholar has been doing for a long time. Again, the difference is they've done it in a closed way. And so all of our algorithms for that, the way we do it, you can go download off of our GitHub. The models, instructions of how to create the models, everything we're doing is completely in the open. And it's, as it improves, which it is doing, it's a hard problem. And so I think we're getting better at it as time goes by. You can see how it improves, and you can see our performance on benchmarks and stuff like that. So someone absolutely have to do that, because as you said, the metadata ain't great. But what we feel like, and what I'm really passionate, really excited about, is like, let's do that in the open. I'll give you a quick example of that. Is something people are really interested in is tagging UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Oh yes, I noticed you have that. You're tagging, you're adding SDG codes.
Exactly, right, in the SDG codes. So they write a paper and it helps solve, I think SDG 2 is zero hunger. It helps make the world less hungry. They want to see that tag. Hey, my paper, not only did I help me get tenure, which is great, but also it's addressing UN SDG number 2, zero hunger. And so they want that tag done. Now, obviously, at the scale we're working, hundreds of millions of articles, you need to do that automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went, wow, maybe we can do this automatically. And we saw there's been so much effort being done in the open by other organizations to create an SDG tagger. So we got involved with that community. I think we contributed a little bit of code. We definitely have used the code that they've used, and that's what we're using now. And again, you can dig that up and you can see it yourself. And when you see errors, you can get involved in that community and make it better. I really, like I said, I think the really big difference between what we're doing and what has sort of ever been done is that we really are doing this as a community, which is how science is supposed to work. And so why shouldn't scholarly metadata work the same way that scholarship does?
Yeah, absolutely. I love your you mentioned sort of the word ecumenical, sort of your sort of open approach to sort of instead of providing a single fix, sort of leaving people to sort of to do what they want. But that extends to some of the most exciting areas in the last, even before generative AI, there is a whole host of small-scale initiatives providing tools for scholars that have all sort of grown up, and many of them make use of services like OpenAlex. So I'm thinking of things like finding peer reviewers and summarizing. You probably know, you could list all the companies. So isn't it tantalizing to think that you could be offering some of these services yourselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, yeah, and honestly, I think the reason why OpenAlex exists, though, is because I've always, as a person who likes to make things, I've always wanted to build those kinds of questions, those kinds of tools. Like you said, find peer reviewers, summarize a paper, create a map of the argumentation around a certain topic. Like all that kind of stuff is so cool to me, and I'm 100% sure that in 5 years, those are going to be ubiquitous. And in 10 years, those will have replaced, I think, journals. I would love to build those things. But when I wanted to build those things, I found that the grist for my mill was not there. Like I didn't have the data that I needed to build it. And so that's when I thought, well, gosh, if I were to build OpenAlex, then a whole slew of creators, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people with great ideas who are way more talented than me could build on top of that infrastructure. Someone just needs to do the kind of less glamorous work. I always look at it as the pipes under a city, right? Like I'm speaking from Paris right now. It's a lovely city. They've got bakeries downstairs. They've got restaurants. There's clothing stores, like all these different places, right? None of those could really have a business without water. They need to be able to turn the tap on and get water out of the tap. No one talks about Paris, the city of pipes. No one cares. But it has to be there. Those pipes have got to be there. Everyone just knows that you turn the water, you can get there, and then they can build something really cool on top of that. And that's what OpenAlex is designed to be, the sort of unglamorous plumbing underneath a whole beautiful urbanization of scholarly communication. Something where people are building all these really cool tools that help us, do scholarship like we never were able to do before. But they need that plumbing, and that's where we fit in. That's what we really want to do, and I'm laser focused on that.
I can echo that. I worked for a while with an AI company that did concept extraction for commercial publishers, and it was predated generative AI, but it was this similar kind of process. You created a corpus, then you indexed it, and you created some concepts out of it. But the work of processing the content was always the unsexy bit. Within the company, the machine learning experts were the stars, and the sort of and the data processors were the sort of the mundane people. And yet, more money was spent on processing the content than it was ever spent on adding the clever algorithms.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to you when you built your library tools, what was remarkable is that they showed a great sort of awareness and understanding of what libraries were trying to do. Finding out a particular problem and solving them. So, are you doing the same thing with OpenAlex? I mean, because it's such a sort of it's a platform that we use for totally different purposes. Are you identifying specific use cases, or surely you're dealing with a whole multiplicity of users and purposes. So it must be quite difficult to work out sort of where to focus your efforts on, sort of what to build next.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a good insight. Thank you for the nice words about being well targeted to libraries in the past. I appreciate that, and that definitely is our goal now. I would say, we go really deep in the library community. I've been hanging out with library folks for like a decade, and so I have a lot of, so was my co-founder, so is other people in our company. So we got a lot of great relationships there, and librarians have been really generous with their time and their help with us. But I would even say we need to go beyond that community as well. Like we have a lot of users that you mentioned in sort of the enterprise world, people making startups. This last year and this year are just, I think, almost are unprecedented, like glimmer in your eye to startup idea times, when you can use sort of these AI-based coding tools to turn an idea into a product really quickly. So we want to make sure that we're serving those folks, people who are going to have no affiliation with libraries. In the institution, the universities, we also want to make sure we're helping folks like in the VPR's office, the Vice Provost of Research, Vice President of Research. We got a lot of interest in that because they're doing a lot of analytic stuff. Other offices in the U.S., in the university, the international office, the planning office. Like there's just a lot of folks who are really interested in what we're doing. We're trying to keep building those relationships just across the university and then across the the private sector. We got huge companies, big pharma. I think we got Bayer, GlaxoSmithKline, a bunch of these big pharma companies. Obviously, they are trying to do literature-based discovery, which is I love. I think is a terrific use case. So, as you said, there's a really big community, and definitely the challenge for us is maintaining that focus. I don't know that we're nailing that. That's something I think we got to try and do a little bit better maybe this coming year.
One of the big issues that's become far more apparent in the last 2 or 3 years is research misconduct, where there's been you've heard about the Hindawi sort of problem and paper mills and all the sort of various things about that. Do you think there's any way that OpenAlex might be able to help in managing the situation, which is clearly may or may not be getting worse, but it's certainly getting more noticed?
Oh yeah, no, I mean we are. I'm delighted to see all of the work on research misconduct that's using our data. I'm super happy about that. If you want, to catch people, essentially, fraudulent publishing practices is most of what people are talking about when they're talking about research misconduct right now, or at least in the context of your question. If you want to catch people employing fraudulent publishing practices, you better know what their publication record is, right? There's no way to do it without that. You need to have that. That's the data, right? That's the forensic data that's being investigated. And if that forensic data is locked up in a total access database, number one, it decidedly limits the number of people who can use it or mine it for clues, if you will. And it also means that it's hard to share that data with other people to try and make your case. And so I think that's why we've attracted a lot of folks doing that kind of forensics have turned to our data set. I just saw one recently where people were, this was published on Archive a couple of days ago, so it sticks in my mind, but where they were finding people who were sneaking, it was diabolical, I guess, but people who were sneaking journals, who were sneaking fake references into Crossref. So they would basically if I write an article and I cite maybe 20 papers from all different journals, and I publish it with your journal, if you were fraudulent, you would say, okay, cool, great, we'll publish that. But then in Crossref, I'll add 200 more journals, 200 more citations, all citing my journal. Yeah. So I'm boosting my, right? And since it all happens in the realm of metadata, no individual human readers even see it. So these folks on Archive, they had created basically I think it was using kind of network topology to identify outliers and say, well, it's kind of unusual to get cited by, to cite 200 things on the same journal. But in a lot of these forensic, these what do they call it? I don't know, statistical forensics techniques are looking for outliers. And I love that OpenAlex is a source of data for so many of those efforts, and they can create stuff to automatically discover that kind of malfeasance. And as you say, the question is always is it increasing now, or is it just we can see it better now? And I think probably the answer is a little bit of both.
Bit of both, yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like the sort of what is or isn't an acceptable level of self-citation, which is the sort of thing which a machine-based check can be very helpful in assisting you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you haven't gone down the route of as some organisations have, like sort of DOAJ, of moving towards, if you like, an authority list of what is or isn't acceptable in terms of acceptable journals or acceptable So you keep your approach sort of indexing everything, and then sort of what happens if you find that sort of journals or papers are retracted?
Yeah, well, I mean, we definitely mark that. That's a big part of our data set is that if things are retracted, they get marked. We have a flag is retracted equals true, and that's something you can filter on in the user interface. And it's something that you can investigate, run studies on in the data set or in the user interface. So yeah, it's definitely our policy to, like a lot of, I think, organizations is like the publishers themselves, it's good to leave that up there for the record, along with a very like prominent flag that like this has been retracted.
Just to finish off, you're in the envious position of having a startup that works. Most startups disappear within 18 months or so. Now you've got OpenAlex running. Do you still have time? It sounds like you have time to do research, or is all your time spent managing the organization?
Oh, me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nature of what we're doing means that you end up having to do a lot of like investigating. I think there's like small R research and big R research. Like I'm researching every day, right? Like and testing hypotheses and stuff like that. Whether it's like publishable or not, I think I don't publish very much. I published a paper about OpenAlex, which then people cite because they use OpenAlex, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think published any like actual like hypothesis-driven research for some time. But I'm happy with that. I get to do like small R research of like just learning stuff about the world and turning that into hopefully a better product, and that suits me pretty good right now.
Well, you're certainly doing. You seem to be doing the right thing because OpenAlex has been sort of an astonishing success. So, congratulations for the what you've achieved so far, and let's hope you can continue in the next few years. Do you have any immediate plans for that? I mean, you have what's your I know it's a sort of a trite question to say, what do you plan to do in 3 to 5 years? But do you have sort of plans for it?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I should mention too, my colleague Kyle Demis has been publishing some good research in association with some folks, Juan Pablo Alperin, a couple other researchers. I should give them a shout out. I forgot about that. But yeah, we are still turning out some research. I personally am not quite as involved. But yeah, your 3 to 5 years question, man, I tell you, I feel like anyone who has a really concrete answer for that question has not been paying attention to like advances over the last 2 years, like for real. Like I really think you really, really like have to take the stance of we're going to try to stay in a reasonable financial position, try and staff up with good people, and be extremely agile and flexible and open-minded, because the world at the end of this year is going to look very different from the world at the beginning of this year. I think as we see compounding interest in AI developments, I don't know if you saw the Chinese like MIT licensed model that dropped today, like huge improvement, like I mean, amazing improvement in the open source model space, like hugely. That kind of stuff is happening every week or two. So I just think that, I think Zuckerberg was talking recently, oh, we're going to replace a bunch of mid-level engineers with AI. And like, that just sounds like talk. That's actually going to happen. Like maybe this year, maybe next year, that for real is going to happen. Like, and I think that you really have to be super flexible in that world. We are definitely looking at switching a lot of our processes over from sort of old-fashioned, you said like machine learning based, approaches to more generative AI approaches. And I think we're going, as the cost of that goes down, I think we're going to be able to roll out some really, really exciting things later this year. We definitely have some good targets for this year. We're going to be rolling out an analytics platform. So the current UI is really kind of around search and discovery. You type the thing, you find it, and then you can facet it. So it's a bit more like Scopus or Google Scholar, or it's a discovery thing. But a lot of people use us for analytics. They want to try and say, okay, well, who at our university is collaborating on oceanography with people in the global south? Like questions like that are very like, and how is that increasing? Do you consider like analytic questions? And I think those questions are very interesting. I think they can be cool. They can be sometimes, again, that data can be misused, but I think they're interesting. And what we're trying to build is something that will answer those questions. It's like a much more in-depth user interface to allow people to really like dive into the data. And it's going to come with the ability to download millions of rows as a table, just like that, like in a minute, which I'm really excited about. the ability to ask. It'll come with a new query language that you can share, like in a paper, because that's something people have asked about a lot. A lot of other goodies like that. And nested queries like and or to like nested to an arbitrary depth. So stuff like that I think people, a lot of folks in research analytics have been asking about. So that's definitely something will happen this year. And we're also going to add a lot of sources. Like I was in a meeting today, and like we have about 200 and some, I don't remember, 200 something million, 250 million ish works right now.
Yep.
And we were just looking at a potentially, increasing that by at least 100 million, bringing in sources from repositories. So that's something that'll happen this year as well. So those are things that I can say are like on the roadmap for us that I would be surprised that didn't happen this year. But for a lot of the other stuff, like let's just hold on tight and see what happens. I'm really excited. I think that like we're going to be able to do stuff that we can barely imagine today. And we're really excited to do that. The key thing for us is we'll just do it in the open. We'll make sure that's totally open and that it can be something we do together as a community.
You're the first person I've interviewed who's described machine learning as old-fashioned. So I think so. I think if my New Year's resolutions include the words ecumenical and flexible, it sounds like I'll be doing the right thing. And let's hope I can sort of achieve the kind of things you've done. Anyway, thanks very much, Jason, for all your time, and really good to talk to you again. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you too. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and thanks very much for inviting me. It was a delight talking, and let's stay in touch.
Thanks very good. Thanks very much.